summer's been anything but quiet in San Antonio. The Spurs grabbed Dylan Harper and Carter Bryant in the draft, signed Luke Cornett, traded for Kelly Olynyk, handed De'Aaron Fox max extension, and filled out the margins with a couple of two-way guys who might actually stick in the rotation. On paper, the heavy lifting's done, and from now until opening night, you wouldn't expect any big roster earthquakes. But it's not the time for Brian Wright to drink margaritas on the beach. There's still one big and important decision: Jeremy Sochan's extension. The Polish forward is heading into the final year of his rookie deal, and for the past few days, the Spurs have had the green light to offer him an early extension. Haven't pulled the trigger. Why not? A lot of Spurs fans, including me, figured the deal would be done the minute the CBA allowed it. Day one, handshake. Tweet from Chams, done. But here we are, a week later, no leaks, no press releases, no Spurs lock up Sochan headlines. And the longer the silence drags on, the louder the question gets. Maybe the situation is a lot more complicated and layered than it seems at first glance. Let's take the most realistic look possible from every side and angle, and try to answer the main question: should the Spurs extend Jeremy Sochan? And if they should, then for how much? We'll also talk about Sochan's long-term outlook, his current and future role with the team, and what exactly we expect from him going into this season. Jeremy is an elite defender. And honestly, it feels like a crime how little recognition he gets. Sure, last year he couldn't realistically be in the running for any defensive awards because he missed too many games, fair enough. But still, I can't remember a single time his name came up on national TV when the talk turned to the league's best defenders. But Spurs fans know the truth, that Sochan is criminally underrated. In today's NBA, there's one prototype every team is desperate to get their hands on: a rangy wing who can switch onto anyone without breaking a sweat. In a league built on constant motion and endless screens, having a guy who's basically switch-proof is worth its weight in gold. At 6'8", 230 pounds, and having a 7-foot wingspan, Jeremy might as well be the template for the modern lockdown wing. He's quick enough to stay glued to shifty guards, strong enough to bang with power forwards, and tough enough to survive in the post against bigs. And when he's healthy, he's out there most nights taking on the toughest assignment on the floor. Luka one game, Ant the next, then Halliburton, Tatum, even Trae Young. Let's look at stat like how NBA players defended Luka Doncic last season. Luka barely noticed being guarded by Andrew Nembhard, Christian Brown, and Wiggins, and he posted above-average true shooting percent against elite defenders like Luguentz Dort and OG Anunoby. Only two NBA players held Luka below 50%: Toumani Camara and Jaden McDaniels, against whom Luka managed a modest 47%. Oh, and in his own league, there's Jeremy Sochan. Luka shot just 36.8% true shooting against him. That's literally worse than the league's worst true shooting percent player, Alex Sarr, with 48%. So Sochan's defense turns the league's most unguardable player into its least efficient scorer. But in today's NBA, just being elite on one side of the ball isn't enough to guarantee you a steady role. This is the era of two-way players. If all you can do is score, or all you can do is defend, you're basically a dinosaur. And while defense is Sochan's calling card, his offense has some sneaky, almost overlooked wrinkles. If you break it down, most of his scoring and playmaking comes from two things: running pick and rolls and cutting hard to the rim. Here's the part that makes you raise an eyebrow. He's actually shockingly effective in pick and roll situations, even with his still developing ball handling. And it's not just in one role. He's been productive as the initiator, as the roll man, and even as the passer out of the action. The wildest stat of all, by a lot of key pick and roll metrics, Sochan's been more efficient than Wemby himself. The other big piece of Sochan's scoring comes from his cuts to the basket, and more often than not, it's Victor setting him up. Wemby likes to float out near the perimeter, dragging the defense with him like a magnet, and that's when Sochan slips in unnoticed, right to the rim. We saw it plenty last year, but I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes an even bigger part of San Antonio's offense, as Victor grows into a full-blown playmaking center, somewhere in the Jokic-Sabonis spectrum, but with his own twist. Those rim cuts might turn into one of the Spurs' most reliable weapons. Now, let's move on to the negatives and not ignore the elephant in the room. The three-point shot is Sochan's biggest weakness right now, and honestly, it's a problem for the entire current Spurs roster. Fox hit just 31% from deep last season, and that number dipped to 27% after joining San Antonio. Stephon Castle shot 28%. Dylan Harper was around 33% back in college. When your main ball handlers and a key forward are all sitting in that range, defenders don't have to respect the spacing. The floor shrinks, the paint clogs, and every half-court possession turns into a grind. The real problem with Sochan's shooting isn't just the 31% from deep, it's the volume. He only put up 1.7 threes per game, and most of those were wide open looks. He almost never takes contested shots, which means defenders can flat out ignore him beyond the arc. And that's the bigger issue. It's not just about missing a couple extra points here and there. It's about how his lack of gravity chokes the Spurs' spacing. Fox, Castle, and Harper all do their best work attacking the rim, but when Sochan's defender doesn't even bother chasing him to the corner and instead camps a few steps inside the paint, those driving lanes get clogged fast. Suddenly, every trip to the basket feels like rush hour traffic. The upside? Jeremy's not in denial. He's clearly been working on it. The old slow shot put release is gone, replaced by something smoother, quicker. At least in workouts, the form looks better. But as Ben Simmons will gladly remind you, gym threes don't always translate under the lights. If he can bump that percentage up to 35 or better next season, it won't just add another weapon to his game. It'll change the geometry of the whole Spurs offense. Defenders won't be able to sag, the pick and roll will open up, and suddenly San Antonio's half-court sets could look a whole lot more dangerous. If Jeremy wants a serious extension, he's got to solve his own shooting problem. Nobody's paying big money for a one-way player who needs his teammates to hide his biggest flaw. Moving on to Jeremy's second issue, which I actually consider even more important: durability. Last year he played only 54 games because of a back injury. Now, you might wonder, were injuries just a one-season thing, and did he play all 82 games before? Not exactly. In his second season, he appeared in 74 games, which is decent, but in his rookie year, it was only 56. Those numbers worry me even more than his shaky three-point shot. After all, a player like Jeremy, a lockdown defender, a glue guy, can exist in the league without a reliable jumper, but he has to be available always without fail. Guys like Josh Hart, Alex Caruso, Derek White, they hardly miss games, and their coaches can count on them night in, night out. And the latest news isn't exactly comforting. Jeremy won't be participating in Eurobasket for Team Poland due to a newly sustained calf strain. As far as I understand, he now has to leave the national team setup and return to Texas so the Spurs medical staff can take over his rehab. I'm just a regular fan with no inside access, so I can only speculate about what's happening in San Antonio's front office, but my guess is that Jeremy's uncertain health status is exactly what's holding the Spurs back from offering him an extension. Now, about the money. What kind of contract are we talking about here? I think Sochan is looking at a deal in the range of Keldon Johnson's, who signed 4 years for $74 million, maybe a little more or less. And yes, that's serious money. Does Jeremy deserve it? Absolutely. He's served the Spurs faithfully these past 3 years, doing all the dirty work the coaching staff asked for, like playing point guard season ago or small ball center while Wemby was out. But are the Spurs obliged to give him that kind of money? That's trickier. They've passed the rebuild phase and are entering a contender phase now. And in that context, they can't afford to carry bad long-term contracts. Victor Wembanyama is entering his third year in the league, which is when the team will demand far more wins and mature basketball from him. The Spurs' primary task is to give the alien optimal conditions to reach his potential, which means no bad contracts clogging the payroll. So what options do the Spurs have here? Basically, there are two main routes and one compromise. Option A, offer Sochan the money now. If he progresses in his shot and stays healthy, it's a solid move. If not, the Spurs could end up stuck with a bad contract for 4 years or more while still needing to extend Wemby, Castle, and Harper. Option B, wait until next summer, watch Sochan all year, decide what he's actually worth, and see how Jeremy tests the market. If another team offers a bigger deal, the Spurs would have the right to match. It's the safest, most pragmatic route, but it's not perfect. Jeremy will clearly be unhappy with such a cold, calculated approach from his own team, and that could spark locker room tension. He might even end up costing more if he posts a healthy 70-game season, averaging 15-plus points, shooting over 35% from three, and maintaining elite defense, the kind of numbers that could attract a big money offer from someone else. In that scenario, San Antonio either loses the player or gets him back for an even bigger contract. But there's also a third path, the compromise route. And honestly, right now, it feels like the one that makes the most sense, at least to me. Instead of rushing into a big contract offer or sitting back for an entire year and hoping nothing blows up, Spurs could take a middle road. Wait a few months, watch the first 10-20 games of the season, really see how Jeremy holds up physically, and pay attention to whether that jumper, the one we've all been waiting to improve, actually shows any signs of consistency. This way, Spurs get a clearer picture before committing, they reduce the risk of locking themselves into a long-term deal that could become a burden if injuries or shooting woes persist, and they still keep the door open to reward Jeremy properly if he proves he can handle the load. On top of that, it sends a message that the team is thoughtful, pragmatic, and patient. efficient. Not reckless, not cynical, just smart with their cap, especially with Wemby in year 3 and the pressure on to compete. In my view, this compromise route is the best way forward right now, and if I had to bet, I'd say Brian Wright is exactly the kind of front office guy who will play it this way, waiting, watching, and making the call once the picture is a lot clearer. Alright guys, what do you think? How much should the Spurs offer Jeremy and when? Share your thoughts in the comments.